And thank you for joining us for a new season of Journeys of Challenge, where we identify challenging situations in life that we struggle with and try to uncover solutions within them. And I'm delighted to present our new guest this evening, a renowned author of many books, and that is Elizabeth Syoboda. Did I pronounce that correct, Elizabeth?
That is exactly right. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come on our program. We're very delighted. I just got back from a few weeks away in the summer, and I really enjoyed your book. I read about it the first time in the Wall Street Journal. I'm a little bit of an avid Wall Street Journal reader. Yep. And I read the review there and found Wonderful. It very enlightening and helpful and very practical, your book. And I was traveling quite a bit, so believe it or not, a good part of your book I listened to on Spotify and quote unquote books on tape, but that was very helpful as well. But before we jump into talking about your book, The Art of Pacing, just wanted to know, tell us a little about yourself and how you came to write on this topic.
Absolutely. So yes, I'm Elizabeth Syoboda. I have been a science writer for many years. I've contributed to Scientific American. I'm a regular contributor to the Boston Globe, Greater Good magazine, a range of different outlets. And as you say, my latest book is The Art of Pacing, and then the subtitle is A Guide to Balancing Short-Term Demands with Long-Term Thriving. So how do you find that healthy pace where you can continue striving toward the things that are important to you and your community, and yet do it in a sustainable way? And where the book came from, I think it's a very personal book for me. I was actually, I would say I was inspired to write it because in the past I have had so much trouble myself with pacing. Might be a familiar story, but where I grew up, it was sort of a school system and a local culture where perfection was sort of the baseline, and also sort of piling up as many accomplishments as you could as quickly as possible, get to the finish line before everybody else. And I think I didn't understand when I was a teenager, when I was a young person, how unsustainable, how damaging that was in some ways. But it was too much. I was just kind of approaching life like a smorgasbord, piling all these honors, all these activities, all these difficult classes onto my plate. And then even by the end of high school, I kind of crashed out. I wasn't able to work for a while. And, I kind of saw that as a personal failure, but it was more the lens that I see it through now is that it was a pacing problem, and that if I had set a healthier pace to begin with, I wouldn't have, as a young person, then again, as an adult, as I entered the working world, I wouldn't be pushing myself too hard and then crashing out in the wake of that, and then sort of repeating that cycle of pushing myself and crashing. Maybe that sounds familiar to some of your listeners.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's really something that I think we all struggle with, and it gets, in my opinion, harder and harder. The world is busier and busier, and many of us were busy with good things. We have families, and we have personal obligations and professional obligations and communal obligations, and there's only a limited amount of energy that we have, and there's a limited amount of time that we have. Mm-hmm. And with all the inventions of the world is advancing at a breakneck pace, but no one has ever figured out to extend the day beyond 24 hours. I would love to see maybe Elon Musk come up with a model where we have like a 30-hour day, go from a,
I'm sure he would love it if he could find a way to make that happen.
He would love it. He would love it as well. So we're all so busy. Various people have, different levels of business, but I think as time goes on, we're getting busier and busier, and we definitely need solutions, which I would like to talk about in your, which you mentioned in your book. But before that, I'd just like to get your thoughts on, one of the concerns that we have in this topic, of course, is burnout. You mentioned crashing, burnout, but if you can just give like a general overview about like what are early warning signs of burnout where a person needs to say to themselves, I got to do something differently over here?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the way I view pacing, it is so important to throttle your pace, dial your pace back before you go full blown into burnout. Because what the studies show is that once you are fully burned out, it can take years to recover from that state. It really is a profound state of mental exhaustion, physical exhaustion, and it is possible. And for some of us, unfortunately, we've been through this to sort of limp through life in a state of burnout for years on end, because you simply you see this as just sort of the baseline of your life. This is how it is. I just kind of keep pushing through, pushing the boulder up the hill every single day. But in terms of detecting what's going on before you reach that profoundly exhausted state, there are often clues, and they're often very physical clues. One of them is if you start to notice circadian rhythm disturbances, problems with sleeping and waking. For me, when I start, like usually I don't have trouble falling asleep each night, but when I start shooting bolt upright in bed at say around 4:30 a.m. and my heart is just pounding to beat the band, and it's not even a particular thought that I have in my head. It's just like my entire body feels activated. My nervous system feels too revved. When I get in that state, and when those early wake ups, those really intense wake ups start happening for a few days in a row, that really is a sign to me that, hey, I need to dial back. I need to streamline. I need to take a few things off my plate here for a while if I don't want to descend into full-blown burnout, full-blown anxiety. So that for many people is a sign that they need to pull back. And it might be the early morning wake-ups. It might be the insomnia. You have trouble getting to sleep at night. Or maybe you just feel profoundly exhausted in the middle of the day in a way that you didn't before. So those circadian rhythm things can often be a clue. And another thing is, if you have listeners who are into tracking your physical signs, like I have a fitness ring, an Oura ring that tracks my sleep, my heart rate, a whole bunch of different things. But trackers like this, like the Apple Watch, other types of fitness trackers, they have an indicator in there called heart rate variability. And what that is a measure of how much your heart rate varies between when you breathe in and when you breathe out. And the more variation there is between the in-breath and the out-breaths in your heart rate, the more relaxed and calm your nervous system is. So when your heart rate variability is going up, you're calm, you're in a good state. But if your fitness tracker is telling you like your heart rate variability is going down, it's getting lower and lower for a number of days on end, that really is a sign that your nervous system is probably in a state where you need to dial back, you need to do some reorganization of your schedule to prevent full-blown burnout. But again, you don't have to have the fitness tracker. The circadian rhythm disturbances are often a very reliable sign, or just subjectively, how are you feeling? Like being willing to have these honest internal conversations with yourself, I think. We know whether the pace that we're keeping is sustainable for like another week, another month, or a year, but often we're not honest with ourselves about it. So I think checking in with yourself more often than most of us typically do. Is this something I can sustain? How am I feeling? Am I really struggling to get through the day? Am I counting down the minutes until I get to go home from work? Those kind of things are signs. And I think we need to put just as much store in our subjective judgments about these things as we do the more physical signs. But altogether, you get a pretty good portrait of how close that you're getting to the edge in terms of burnout.
Sure. And, just to be honest for a moment, something that I struggle with as well, in my life, the pace of the life. And it's interesting, just coming back now from a longer vacation, so to speak.
Good for you. Yeah.
my position as a rabbi, rabbinic leader, really is a 7 day a week position. So over time, you can only burn the candle for that long.
Yes.
And a few years ago, spoke to the synagogue and said, I don't think I'll be able to sustain this,
Yeah. Yeah.
indefinitely. So came up with this idea that I would take off a month in the summer, and so this year I took off a month in July,
Yeah.
and it really helps me, refresh, recharge, both physically and emotionally, where I'm more in a better position to take care of my responsibilities. Yeah, and you can only take care of your responsibilities when you're taking care of yourself. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
there's this famous a sage in Jewish history. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. His name was Hillel. Hillel. He said many profound things, including in what we call Pirkei Avos, which is loosely translated as the sages from our fathers. And he wrote, I'll just say it in Hebrew and then in English, he wrote, "Ein ani li mili," which means if I am not for myself, then who will be for me? And the basic understanding is that we can always point and say, I'm overworked because I have a boss. I'm overworked because I have family to support, and I have to work harder so I can pay the bills. I'm forced to do this, and all this could be true. Not suggesting that this is untrue, but at the end of the day, we all need to take responsibilities for ourselves and our choices. And obviously there are certain extreme circumstances where a person doesn't have agency, but for the most part, we need to adopt the idea of if I'm not going to look after myself in this case, then who is going to look after myself? So I think it's so poignant. I just want to kind of jump into your book. You wrote several chapters, and there's a lot of wisdom in it, and I don't use that term lightly, and a lot of profound things. But I just want to, I guess, highlight, I think, three of the areas of the book. The first part I want to talk about would be you talk about narrative reflection and reflecting on what your purpose is, and how that can give you insight in how to allocate your time and energies and so on and so forth. I'll just mention that that's a big big idea in Judaism. I guess arguably one of our most important nights of the year in the Jewish calendar is the Passover Seder. And the Passover Seder is all about retelling our story. We retell our story as how we became a people. Originally, the Jewish people were slaves in Egypt, and then God emancipated us, and we became a free people. But the general idea is when you retell your story, you once again understand your purpose in the world. So many of us were just like, running like hamsters on the wheel, and we're just running. Wake up in the morning, run to work, kill ourselves at work. Get the paycheck, rest, go back to work, and we don't have time to understand our story and where we're going, where we're coming from. So I guess my practical question is, in today's frenetic life or lifestyles that we have, what would you say are practical ways of someone can just engage in this narrative reflection, as you call it, and help them identify their purpose, and that can help them understand how to pace themselves properly?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. Like these questions about meaning, purpose, what are we striving for? Those need to be at the foundation. Certainly for any pacing plan, if you don't have an idea of where you're headed, where you want to end up, or what you're striving for, what you want to bring back to your community, then layering more granular pacing tactics on top of that is not going to really do you that much good. So that's why early in my book, I take people through an exercise actually designed by a wonderful researcher at Boston College, Ben Rogers, and he calls it the restorying process. And what it is really is a series of prompts or questions that draw from ideas about the hero's journey. So essentially, you imagine yourself and your life as if you were a protagonist of a story. So the questions are along the lines of, what are you after? What is the goal that you're striving for? What obstacles have you faced in getting there? You know, heroes and stories always face obstacles of some type or another. Then who are your allies? Who do you see helping you along the way to your goal, to your purpose? And then the big one for me is then, what legacy do you ultimately want to leave in your community and for the world? And so we see these questions in stories from so many cultures, whether it's Judaism, ancient Greece. These are really very universal questions. And so in my book, I think it's in chapter 3, but I walk you through how to do this restorying exercise. And I think it really surfaces, it has a way of connecting you very quickly to this matter of, does what you say you want most, what matters the most to you, is that at the heart of what you're actually doing day to day? Does your larger purpose align with the day-to-day way that you are living your life? And so considering that, you have a chance to do some reorientation if you want to, so that the larger purpose, the legacy that you want to leave, is in alignment with what you're doing day to day, whether it's at work, whether it's in the community. It doesn't have to be that your work is perfectly in alignment, but that you find ways within your day, whether it's at work, in the community, to work toward that larger purpose that is the most important to you.
Right. No, yeah, that's very well said. And after I read that chapter in your book, I did just do some basic research into the hero's journey, and did the exercise myself, and found it very helpful. I feel that, and for so many of us, and so many of us want to be involved in good things. I'm talking about, just for a moment, let's say volunteers. I'm in a privileged to be a leader in a community where there are so many people that step up in so many different ways, give their time, their energy, their resources.
Definitely.
And some of the feedback that I've been getting over the years from volunteers is that, like, they sign up for something because of idealism. They want to make a difference, and they want to contribute to the greater good. And then it comes down to the real life minutia, and they're like, just feel trapped with so much, like, red tape, or just inconveniences of life, so to speak. And I think this exercise is a helpful tool in saying, what have I signed up for? And this is not just about volunteerism, but this is just like one example that comes to mind. And what are my passions, interests, and how do I want to leave a legacy? And maybe I can allocate my time and energy and focus a little differently. Maybe sometimes it just needs a tweak. And
exactly. Yeah. And I think one reason doing this exercise is so important is it makes that streamlining process a little bit easier when you're considering everything that is on your plate. Once you have a clear idea of your purpose, you can then identify more clearly, okay, what is most in alignment with that versus what is something that maybe I feel obligated to do or got roped into for some reason or another, but it doesn't really align with where I'm going overall. And so for me, it's been helpful just having that purpose close. And yeah, we all have, as you said, these busy lives. We all need to cut back. This is sort of a North Star that you can use as you make your decisions about what's going to remain at the center of my life, and maybe what's going to move more to the periphery or move out of my life altogether.
Yeah, very, very true. I just want to pivot to another, I guess, area of discussion in your book. I believe it's another chapter called Brief Candle Moments. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the article, did you write that article in the Wall Street Journal, or did the journal review your book?
That one was an article that I wrote. Yeah. Right.
So Brief Candle Moments. So if I'm not mistaken, tell me if I'm not remembering in its entire accurate way, but you would go on these like micro trips, like these like 24
Yes.
hour, 36-hour retreats,
Yep.
just long enough to have like a mini recharge.
Yes.
And I found that like pretty enlightening. And this is the chapter in your book, because many of us think that we got to go away we need a vacation. We need to go away for a week, 2 weeks. We got to go to some, beach where the sand is so powdery and there's just like serving like pina coladas, and, and there's a swim up bar nearby. And,
Yeah.
we have these fantasies of this like break that we're going to have.
Hmm.
And what I gathered from your book, it's not a zero sum game.
Right.
We should attempt to incorporate within our regular schedules pockets of time that we can disengage and recharge, and even if it's just for 24 hours. So I just
Yep.
wanted to get your thoughts in general on this, and if you want to elaborate on some of the things that you've done or you would recommend. Obviously everyone has different lives, have different
Hmm.
opportunities, but just I want to get your thoughts more on this.
Yeah, yeah. So with that Wall Street Journal story, I did talk about one basic tactic that I had used, still use, and have for a number of years at this point. But when my kids were extremely little, toddlers, maybe I had like a toddler and a kindergartner, and oftentimes it just felt like I couldn't go more than 20 minutes without an interruption. It was just, it felt like there was this baseline level of chaos all the time that made it hard for me to do deep thinking or make progress on the creative work that mattered a lot to me. So I kind of made an agreement with my husband that, okay, here's what we're going to try. I'm going to use some of my credit card points. I'm going to get a hotel locally that will allow me to check in early afternoon on one day, and then throughout that day and into the next, what I would do, I would sort of alternate between sort of that deep, very flow state creative work that I was missing and that I didn't have much of an opportunity to do. And then when I would reach a point of diminishing returns with that, I would just sleep. And so I kind of would alternate between this deep work and the sleeping for about 24 hours. And for me, that was just so refreshing. And I went back to my normal life, so to speak, so energized that I've kept doing that a few times a year now, ever since then. And I would encourage people, yeah, you might not have the capability to take a month off necessarily. I mean, it would be great if you could, but maybe you just can't at this point in your life. But almost anybody can make 24 hours, whether it involves taking a sick day at work, making an arrangement with your spouse like I did. If you do enough planning, you can make that time and space for yourself and just experiment with that, see how that works for you. And it's a little bit customizable too. Like for me, I really like doing this deep creative stuff, but for some people, maybe it's more contemplation. Maybe it's just more reflection on, am I happy with the direction my life is going, or do I want to make a little bit of a shift, a little bit of a reorientation? And so I think you use the time however you most need to use it at that point in your life, and you will know. I think what's going to be most restful, what's going to be most restorative for you. But I encourage everybody to give it a try if they can, and just see. And sometimes it'll give you the motivation. Okay, maybe if 24 hours made me this refreshed, maybe I can do a week or 2 weeks, or just do different types of planning so that I have more of this decompression time to consider the larger picture of my life and where I'm headed.
Yeah, I think that's very profound, and we don't, I think, pay enough attention to something like this, in the sense that more and more we're, this is part of a larger discussion. But I want to kind of keep it in this focus, like really think in binary terms. So, are
Hmm.
you are you working, or you're on vacation? Are you here,
Yeah.
or you're there? Like you believe in X or Y, and so on and so forth. And
Hmm.
life is not a zero sum game, and there's so many complexities within
Hmm.
ourselves, and within our lifestyles, and within our scheduling commitments, and our conflicts, and things that vie for our attention.
Yep.
So something like this, I think, is just a very tactical way of, you know, of addressing an important area, which is, I guess, self-care and making sure that we're pacing ourselves properly, and we don't have to do something like elaborate or, you know, do something which is expensive.
Right. We don't have to go on a meditation retreat that costs thousands of dollars or
Yeah,
whatever you see on social media these days. Yeah.
yeah. You can just, tailor it for your own, and obviously people have, jobs, and people have families, and people have other obligations, and I think that's
Yeah.
why it's refreshing. Your example, you just kind of worked it out with your spouse,
Yeah.
and and that was it. And obviously, not everybody has that flexibility, but I feel like we have enough, flexibilities that people can do, kind of try to strategize, and I found that very valuable. I want to move on to um, another topic that you write about in your book, and that's something I think about often, and that is the concept of collective pacing.
Yeah.
Because the challenge is like I said, you and I are talking now, and you have all these great insights and practical tools about how somebody can incorporate better quote unquote pacing in their lives, and maybe
Yeah.
I'll try to adopt some of them. Someone else will try to adopt something. But if there's collective pacing, meaning if you're working in a company, or you're working for an organization, or your family has certain constraints or expectations, then the expression of which I like is you're trying to breathe through the overload
Yeah.
to the workplace that keeps pumping smoke into the room. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you can only, like, you're going to hear them doing take deep breaths, and the workplace is going to keep on pumping in smoke into the room. It's not really going to help, and that's, I think, a great metaphor for other areas of life too. It's not necessarily the workplace; it's other factors that quote unquote will keep pumping smoke into the room, and challenge our ability to pace ourselves. So
Yeah.
that being said, I'm taking a deep breath as I'm saying it. That being said,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts of how to achieve collective pacing? Considering we only have limited control, mostly about ourselves, and how we can
Yeah.
navigate that, and what are, I guess, you your thoughts and best practices in terms of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is very much an issue that you can have the best individual pacing practices in the world, but if the environment around you is not supporting that, it becomes very difficult to put those pacing practices into practice and get the most benefit from them in your everyday life. And I knew I wanted to tackle this problem in my book, and I spent time talking to workplace researchers who are really trying to get at this problem of how do you create healthier cultures within these companies, sometimes within nonprofits, where everybody is being pushed to go so hard because there's a sense of mission, there's a sense, I'm chosen for this work, and if I'm not doing this, then a kid isn't getting enough to eat. Like the stakes feel so high, sometimes both at work and in the community, and you sort of get sucked into this collective pace that is way too fast and makes people want to drop out, and just is not nourishing over the long term. What I would encourage people is, if you are somebody who is a manager or just somebody in a work group who has any influence over people that you work with, that you can be an important part of changing this culture, even, and it doesn't have to be real formal interventions. It can be something as small as once a week, you and your team, maybe your 3 and 4 other people that you work most closely with, checking in with each other, just saying, hey, how are you doing with your workload? What are you feeling overwhelmed with? And how can the rest of us support you in getting through that? And so what that does is that sets a group norm or a cultural norm within that work group of, when you're having trouble, you don't have to keep quiet about it. You can be honest about it. You can air it with your teammates. And not only that, they will pitch in to make things better for you. And then you, in return, will listen to the challenges that they're having, and you can pitch in to make things better for them. And that is just something that can work really well at this small group level and this grassroots level. And one of the researchers that I talked to, she said, you don't have to have the CEO buying into this healthier pacing practice at the collective level. It can just be within small work teams. Small teams are very nimble. If everybody, even if just those 3 or 4 people are on the same page, they can make the experience so much easier for everybody within that team. And I think that's something where even if you're not in the corner office or one of these highest perches within your organization, you can still make a real difference for the people that you're working with.
No, yeah, no doubt. And I just want to, I guess, add on to that is that sometimes we anticipate like solutions coming from the top down, as you mentioned, the CEO, or if it's whoever else is in the organization. But the truth of the matter is, many of the solutions come from the bottom up, or can come from the bottom up, where you can just have a few people coming together and saying like, look, this is what we want to do. We want to, be able to check in with each other, so on and so forth. We want to have an opportunity to make sure that we're, not killing ourselves in the process of saving the world.
Exactly.
And so it can come, from the bottom up. And I think even with family members, we can have that conversation, with our spouses, with our children, with our, parents, whomever it is, just to say, look, this is what I think is important. What do you guys think about this? How can we, collectively, move the needle, so to speak, on that.
Exactly. I think, whether it's in a family or an organization, the worst case scenario is if everybody is just suffering in silence and trying to push the boulder up a hill and feeling as if they have no support in that process. But yeah, all of us can be part of just being more forthright about these challenges and then looking for support. I mean, I've even done that at home with my kids. I'm like, we have a lot of things that we need to do to keep this house running. And it's overwhelming for me to have to do all these things. And so can you pitch in? Can you do this to help me? And I find, sometimes it takes a little bit of nudging, but they want to do their part within the family too. And so I think absolutely at home, we can instill these cultures just like we can at work.
Right. And I just want to, I guess, as we're nearing the end of our conversation, just say as a rabbi, I'm a religious leader, and we always encourage, our community folk about the importance of being observant in our faith and engaged in our Judaism, and that takes a lot of time and energy. I mean, just for example, I give a class every morning, Talmud class. It's called Daf Yomi at 6 a.m.
Wow,
so
it's early.
I started that in 2005, so that's over 20 years, and up until a couple of years ago, I was doing that 7 days a week.
Wow.
Thankfully, I have a great assistant now that does it, on the weekends and sometimes here. But that's just an example of the rigor of religious life that takes a toll on human body. We have something called Minyan here, which is our daily prayer service in the morning and evening. And there's a core group of people that come like every morning and every evening, and there's certain intense schedules that we have at different times of the years, especially with high holidays and so on and so forth. So I think I just kind of want to get your thoughts on this. It's important to be cognizant of all that, be fully invested in faith, fully invested in Judaism, fully invested in all our responsibilities, and at the same time be cognizant of our limitations and pacing properly, and not to get into different habits that can burn us out, so to speak. So that's your book. I don't know if it was intended for someone living a religious lifestyle, or different commitments to faith. I think it was mainly talking about the workplace, or there's some stories about athletes and the way they the way they have certain commitments. But I feel like your messages and your topic are really universal and can be helpful to so many people, including those of us that are in the community of faith, and take our faith really seriously, and the demands that has on our time and schedule as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I talk about in the book is really learning to be more comfortable operating in that middle range of the pacing spectrum. Because, I mean, of course, people understand why we can't go too hard for too long, but equally, if you pull back from everything, let's say if you lead a religious life, if you suddenly pull back from all of that and you start sitting at home instead of going to your minyan or going to your service, that's not going to be fulfilling either. You're going to feel isolated. You're going to feel disengaged. And I think what the studies show is that we need some degree of challenge. We need some degree of structure in our lives in order to create long-term fulfillment. And that's one thing that I think religious communities can create really well, is that kind of structure, that kind of community, that kind of commitment. And so I would say that's very healthy to an extent. And I think once you see these warning signs that you've been doing too much in various areas of your life, you can sort of titrate back, but you can do that incrementally. Like a lot of people sort of, when they're feeling overwhelmed, they rush to the other extreme and they kind of drop everything for a few months. And I just don't think that serves most people very well either. So thinking about, as athletes do, sort of titrating back 10%, 20%, 30%, rather than 100%, or like there are all these phrases being thrown around by influencers, like you should quiet quit, you should lie flat for 6 months, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we just need to be more nuanced and more granular about how we do these pacing adjustments instead of swinging between extremes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's very apt way of, I guess, winding down our conversation of how to find that right balance. I feel like the most successful people in life, whichever area of life, are the ones that are able to find like healthy, good balance in life, between their personal responsibilities, their professional responsibilities, between their families, their jobs, anything else, whatever it is, the religious obligations and so on and so forth, are the ones that are able to maintain that balance. So I feel that your book, The Art of Pacing, goes a long way in furthering that worthy goal. So I really want to just thank you again for coming on our program, and I have no doubt that our listeners will immensely enjoy your book if they want to buy it. I'm going to just make a little commercial over here as well. I'm sorry, I'm holding it up. So, The Art of Pacing, and I found it to be really helpful, and encourage my listeners to get a hold of the book. And there's a lot of valuable insights and wisdom in there. So thank you so much for coming on, and I wish you all the best. And I imagine you have any further books on the horizon, things that you're working on at the moment?
Well, there are always articles here and there. As far as my next book, I think I kind of need to go into a period of retreat to figure that out. Because, of course, unavoidably, when a book comes out, there are a lot of publicity things that you need to take care of. And so for a little while, you do get into sort of that day-to-day mode. And so I'm sort of looking forward to, as the fall comes in, things are going to slow down a little bit. And it's not exactly that I'm going to take a month off, but really deliberately budget more time for this kind of deeper, big picture thinking about what do I want to commit to for the next few years. And that can't be rushed. And I'm really looking forward to that time. As much as I've enjoyed sharing the book with people, with communities, it's all finding that balance and going deep and then resurfacing and finding that good rhythm.
Okay, well, thank you. And once again, on behalf of all of our listeners, I appreciate you coming on the program, and wish you all the best as you seek to share your insights and wisdom with with the greater good, the greater society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. It's been a total delight, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
Okay, be well. Bye-bye.
Bye.